Robert De Niro is a name synonymous with greatness in Hollywood. With a career that spans decades, he has cemented himself as one of the most iconic actors of his generation. From his unforgettable roles in The Godfather Part 2 to Raging Bull and Taxi Driver, De Niro's dedication to his craft has earned him the respect of his peers and admiration from fans worldwide. But even a legend like him has faced setbacks, and one of the most memorable moments in his career involved a director who once fired him. This wasn't just any firing, it was a bold, controversial decision that sent shockwaves through the industry at the time. Years later, fate would bring De Niro and this director face to face again. What could have been a tense and awkward encounter turned into something far more legendary. De Niro, known for his stoic demeanor and sharp wit, would not let this moment slip away quietly. Instead, his response to the director would become the stuff of Hollywood lore, a moment that captured his character, his resilience, and his refusal to back down. This story isn't just about a confrontation, it's about the power of standing your ground, even when the odds seem stacked against you. Years before the legendary confrontation, Robert De Niro faced a setback that at the time seemed unimaginable for someone of his caliber. He was fired from a film project, a rare and shocking moment in his storied career. The incident took place during a highly anticipated film directed by a prominent filmmaker in the industry. De Niro, a well-established star with a string of iconic performances behind him, was let go from a role he had been deeply invested in. The reasons for his firing were a mix of creative differences and personal tensions that had been brewing on set. At the time, Hollywood was buzzing with talk of De Niro's departure from the project. For many, it seemed like a major blow not just to his career but to the film itself. This wasn't some up-and-coming actor being replaced, it was Robert De Niro, a name that had come to signify excellence. The move struck many as both unprofessional and unfair, and it sparked debates throughout the industry about the true nature of collaboration and artistic vision. The firing affected De Niro on a personal and professional level. While he continued to work with some of the most respected filmmakers of his time, the experience of being let go left a mark on him. He found himself navigating the aftermath, dealing with questions from the media, and hearing whispers of what went wrong. The incident also brought forth an examination of his relationship with the director involved. Was it a creative dispute, a clash of egos, or something else entirely? The uncertainty and fallout created tension that would linger for years. Despite the setback, De Niro's resilience shone through. He would go on to solidify his place in Hollywood history, but the memory of that moment, when a director decided to part ways with him, would remain a defining chapter in his career. The director who fired Robert De Niro was none other than the ambitious and often controversial filmmaker whose career was defined by bold choices and unorthodox approaches to storytelling. Known for his distinct visual style and a penchant for pushing boundaries, this director had a reputation for being fiercely committed to his vision, sometimes at the expense of established stars. His decision to part ways with De Niro, one of the most respected actors of his time, was seen by many as a shocking move, one that made waves throughout Hollywood. Before the firing, De Niro and the director had shared a professional relationship based on mutual respect. De Niro, ever the dedicated actor, was known to immerse himself fully in his roles, and the director was drawn to his ability to bring depth and complexity to characters. However, as the production progressed, tensions began to rise between them. The director, known for his meticulous attention to detail, had a very specific vision for the film, one that he believed could only be realized through total creative control. On the other hand, De Niro, a seasoned actor with a history of working with some of the industry's greatest directors, had his own expectations for the project and his role in it. As the film's production continued, it became clear that the two had differing approaches to the work. Their creative differences grew, leading to the dramatic decision by the director to let De Niro go. For many, it was a gamble, a risky move that would either pay off or go down as one of the most controversial decisions in Hollywood history. Ultimately, the director's choice would spark debates about the role of power, control, and creative vision in filmmaking. Years passed, and the world of Hollywood continued to evolve. Robert De Niro's career flourished, solidifying his place as one of the greatest actors of his generation, while the director's career took its own winding path. However, the past wasn't something either of them could completely escape. As fate would have it, their paths would cross once again in an unlikely but inevitable encounter. The meeting took place at a prestigious Hollywood event, a gathering of filmmakers, actors and industry insiders, all gathered under the bright lights and swirling gossip of the film world. De Niro, known for his quiet, reserved presence, was making his way through the crowd when he saw him, the director. It had been years since they last spoke, since that controversial moment on set when their professional relationship crumbled. De Niro paused, his eyes locking on the director, and in that split second, a flood of memories rushed back. There was no mistaking it, the tension between them was still palpable, even after all this time. For a moment the world seemed to freeze. The director looked up and saw De Niro standing there, his gaze unwavering. There was no smile, no handshake, just a brief tense silence that hung heavy in the air. It was as though they were both caught in a moment of reckoning, a recognition of past mistakes, hurt feelings, and the weight of unspoken words. De Niro's expression was unreadable, but those who knew him well could sense the simmering emotion beneath his stoic facade. The director, for his part, seemed caught off guard. He wasn't sure how De Niro would react, or what kind of confrontation lay ahead. And then, after a few seconds that felt like an eternity, the director spoke first. His voice was tentative, almost apologetic, acknowledging their shared history. But before he could say much more, De Niro, with the calm precision that had become his trademark, responded in a way that would forever change the nature of their relationship. "Did you think I'd forget?" De Niro asked, his tone low and steady, but with an edge of emotion that made the director's blood run cold. "Did you really think it wouldn't matter?" The words weren't shouted, but they hit with the force of a thunderclap. There was no anger, no yelling, just a simple, undeniable truth that cut through the tension. De Niro wasn't angry, but he wasn't about to let the director off easy. His response wasn't fueled by revenge, but by the deep sense of pride and self-respect that had always defined him. The director, caught off guard by the sharpness of De Niro's words, stammered for a moment, unsure of how to respond. It was clear he hadn't expected such a direct confrontation, and yet, in that moment, something shifted. The years of tension between them were laid bare, and in De Niro's eyes there was no mistaking that this was a moment of reckoning. He wasn't going to forget the past, but he also wasn't going to let it define him. The confrontation wasn't loud or dramatic in the traditional sense. It wasn't a heated exchange of insults or raised voices. Instead, it was a quiet, intense reckoning, a moment that would be remembered not for what was said, but for the weight of what wasn't. As the brief silence stretched between them, the director stood frozen, caught off guard by the sharpness in De Niro's words. It was clear that De Niro wasn't about to let the past slide into oblivion, or let time wash away the sting of what had happened. The tension in the air was thick, De Niro's steady gaze never wavered, and the director, visibly uncomfortable, knew that this moment would be pivotal, one that he could not escape from. The director tried to backtrack, speaking in a hesitant tone, his words stumbling over each other. He offered half-hearted explanations, perhaps hoping that De Niro would soften, or that the actor would allow the past to be buried in the dust of time. But De Niro, with his unyielding presence, wasn't having any of it. His response wasn't loud, but it was powerful, the kind of response that cut through pretense, and forced the director to face the reality of what had happened years ago. "You don't get it, do you?" De Niro said, his voice low but unmistakably firm. "It's not about forgetting. It's about respect. You took something from me that I can't get back, and you thought I wouldn't remember, but I do. I remember everything." The words landed with the weight of years of unresolved frustration. It wasn't just about the firing, it was about the feeling of betrayal, the sense of being discarded by someone who once believed in his talent. De Niro wasn't asking for an apology, but there was no denying the raw honesty in his words. The director had chosen to part ways with one of the greatest actors of his generation, and De Niro wasn't going to let him pretend it hadn't happened, or worse, let it slip into the shadows without acknowledgement. The crowd around them, who had been watching from a distance, could feel the shift in the air. There was an electricity in the room, as De Niro's calm yet piercing words reverberated throughout the space. This wasn't the De Niro of the glitzy red carpets or the polished interviews. This was the De Niro who had lived through the highs and lows of a legendary career, the man who had seen it all and wasn't afraid to call it out when it mattered most. The director, for all his bravado and vision, was now reduced to a shell of himself. He stammered again, trying to make amends, offering more apologies, but De Niro wasn't moved. The actor's response wasn't born of spite, it was an assertion of his own dignity, a declaration that no one could erase the path he had carved in Hollywood. He wasn't just the talented actor on screen, he was a man of principle, one who would never allow himself to be diminished by others' actions. People make mistakes, De Niro continued, his voice remaining steady, even as his words sliced through the tension. But you don't get to walk away from this one without understanding what it did. Not to me, not to you, and not to anyone who worked on that project. There was no grandeur to De Niro's response, it wasn't a theatrical performance, but rather a simple raw declaration of his truth. In that moment, he didn't need to shout or make a scene. His words, delivered with the kind of quiet intensity that only someone with his experience could muster, were enough to make the director, and everyone watching, fully understand the weight of what had transpired all those years ago. De Niro didn't need to continue speaking. His legendary response lay in the power of his silence that followed. The director, humbled and visibly rattled, could do nothing but nod, his face flushed with the realization that the past couldn't be undone. He had expected a confrontation, but not this. De Niro had found a way to make him feel the sting of his decision, and he did so with nothing more than his words, and the calm authority of someone who knew his worth. In the end, the confrontation wasn't about redemption or apology, it was about ownership. De Niro taking ownership of his past, his career, and the respect that was owed to him. It was a reminder that in the world of Hollywood, where the lines between personal and professional often blur, the weight of one's decisions could never truly be erased. The aftermath of De Niro's confrontation with the director rippled through Hollywood, sparking conversation that extended beyond the event itself. In the days that followed, news outlets and industry insiders dissected every moment of the exchange. What had started as a brief encounter at a glamorous Hollywood gathering quickly became one of the most talked about moments in recent film history. The public, captivated by De Niro's legendary response, saw not just a confrontation but a reflection of his unshakable integrity. For the director, the aftermath was much more complicated. While De Niro's words had been measured and composed, they carried an undeniable sting. The director found himself on the defensive, having to address the situation with both his colleagues and the media. The fallout wasn't immediate, but it was clear that his reputation had taken a hit. The industry, known for its penchant for moving quickly past controversies, didn't forget this moment. The director's past actions, particularly his decision to fire De Niro, came under scrutiny once more. Critics and film professionals began to ask whether his vision and approach to filmmaking were worth the cost of alienating one of Hollywood's most respected actors. Meanwhile, De Niro's career only seemed to grow stronger after the confrontation. His legendary response served as a reminder to both his peers and the public that he wasn't just an actor, but a force in the industry, a man who had earned his place and wasn't afraid to stand up for himself, even in the face of the past. The event became a defining moment in his already legendary status, reinforcing his reputation as a man of principle. For De Niro, this wasn't about seeking revenge or proving a point, it was about making sure that his voice and his dignity were respected. The public saw the incident not as a petty squabble but as a testament to De Niro's unwavering commitment to his craft and his self-respect. In the long run, the confrontation didn't just affect the two individuals involved, it had broader implications for Hollywood's power dynamics. The incident highlighted the importance of respect and trust in an industry that thrives on collaboration. It also reminded those in positions of authority that even the most established stars have a breaking point, and that it's crucial to acknowledge the value of those with whom you work. De Niro's legendary response didn't just shape the course of his own career, it had a ripple effect on the way the industry viewed power, respect, and personal integrity. In the end, the moment became a reminder that sometimes, standing your ground is the most powerful statement you can make. The confrontation between Robert De Niro and the director has become one of those legendary Hollywood moments that will be remembered for years to come. It wasn't just about a clash of egos or a brief exchange of words, it was about the unshakable dignity of an actor who had long proven his worth and was not about to let his past be erased. De Niro's response wasn't born out of anger or bitterness, but out of the deep respect he had for himself and his career. It was a moment that underscored the importance of self-respect in an industry often defined by its fleeting nature. In the end, De Niro's legacy wasn't just built on the films he made, but on the values he stood for. His ability to confront the past with grace and assertiveness only further solidified his place as a Hollywood legend, a man who, despite everything, would never be forgotten.